Get ready to amplify your light and shine bright because it's about to get real. Join Spencer Jones, the Prince of Positivity, and get energized with this episode of the Jonesin For Show. Let's go!
Hey, Energizer. Welcome to this episode of the Jonesin For Show. I am really excited to have you here joining me today because we have yet another amazing guest joining us. Holy cow, haven't we had some amazing people join us so far in this season, sharing their wisdom and love with all of you? And we're not stopping. We're not stopping at all. We are bringing another amazing guest your way. He is an author of The Unicorn in You, A Path to Peace and Joy. And what's really cool is we got connected about 2 months ago or so, 2 or 3 months ago. He reached out, heard about me through a mutual friend, and then we started chatting. He sent me his book, and I read it as soon as I got it. And oh my gosh, it aligns so much with me, with all the stuff you hear me say day in, day out on the podcast, on social media, all of that. And I just couldn't wait to get him here for season 2 of the Jonesin For Show. Heck, he's one of the reasons we started season 2. I'm like, okay, we need to have season 2 now because we need to showcase this amazing guest and everything he's doing. So without further ado, please help me welcome the amazing Joshua Kramer. Thank you so much for being here, Josh.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you so much for that wonderful intro. And I'm so glad to finally see you, my friend, because like you said, we connected a while back and we were chatting. I knew we'd find one another because we share a real kinship in just about kind of this journey and what we can do to make ourselves better and to spread a lot of positivity and light. So I'm thrilled to have a great conversation with you.
I love it. That anytime the people who share their lights out with the world come together, more light's produced, and we just help and impact even more people, spreading that joy and light literally all around the world. And I love it. Love it.
That's right.
So I've gotten to know you a little bit here over the last couple of months, reading your book, hearing some of your stories there, but the audience doesn't know you. And I would love for you to share, because you know yourself better than anyone, I would love for you to share your journey with all of us, a little bit about what brought you to where you are today and that beautiful, amazing light that you have that you're sharing out.
Sure. And I appreciate the question because sometimes that reflection is so helpful in kind of setting the table for a discussion. And I found that even in talking about this book, which has been a real transformative moment in my life, I've had to look back and see what brought me to this point and what kind of were the impactful moments in my life. And so just by background, I'm from Northern New Jersey, just outside of New York City. I was born and raised here. I've lived in Washington, D.C., and New York City and South Florida, but I consider myself more a citizen of the world. I really have been fortunate enough to travel and see much of it. And I love traveling because I think it's that exposure to not just diversity of location, but the diversity of thought. And that's something that I think has driven me so much in my life. And so by profession, I have been in the real estate business for about 25 years or so, but I've always been so keen on learning more about myself and how to find peace and joy. I've been a writer, I think, in my own sort of way. And I've also struggled so much with some difficulties with sadness and depression throughout my life. And I was always a reader of self-help books and trying to find different ways. I would consider them more personal development and growth books. And it was around the course of probably 3 years ago that I said I felt that I finally had something to say. I had come to a point in my life where I could maybe identify ways of being rather than doing. And it was sort of the genesis for this book, The Unicorn in You, which talks about having a foundation for being. And so that's a little bit about me and how we got into kind of writing this book and a little bit of my background.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. It's so amazing what happens when we travel, isn't it? When we get to experience different cultures, different places of the world, heck, even different parts of the country we live in. I've been lucky and blessed to visit many parts of the United States. And you go into some, rural places down south and you're like, okay, this is a different kind of culture than here. And one of my wife's and I favorite places to go is Romania. We're leading a international Energizer retreat there later this year, but we love going there because it's such an amazing experience where the people are kind, the people are friendly, but yet it's still a culture shock because things are it's similar, but yet different. And we've noticed that everywhere we've traveled in the world and within the country that it's amazing how similar we are, but yet different. So let me ask you this question. What has been one of your favorite places to travel, and what were some of the eye-opening discoveries you had visiting there?
I lived in London for a short time. I studied in London and I really got exposed to much of Europe. And I think that's what gave me the travel bug. This is now in my early 20s. And so many, many years ago. And from there, I've been able to visit really all of the regions of the world, very fortunately, through Australia, New Zealand, through East Africa, through Southeast Asia, South America, I've been to. But I think it's my travel, similar to you in the United States, that has shaped me so much. Certainly, getting out of the United States has been very impactful. And I think it's so important for anyone to do that, to get out of their own country and specifically the comfort zone. Most recently, I have found visiting areas like Montana and Wyoming where I could connect more with nature. And similar to, this beautiful part of the country that you're in, I just find that it's what allows us to almost step back a little bit, have some little more quiet in our life. And it was actually on a trip to Montana that I went into a gift shop and I found a card that said, "Find the joy in every day."
Mm.
And it was from that I went back to my lodge. I wrote in what I thought were going to be the 5 principles of my book, and I mailed it to myself. And when I got home, that's when I wrote my manuscript. And sometimes we have those moments that give us kind of that, whether it's a genesis or just kind of special point that we just know it's meant to be. It's a moment. And I think that we have to be open to it. And sometimes it's being out in nature that allows us to kind of be more open to it.
I 1000% agree. I love everything outdoors. You'll find me out there hiking and camping and traveling. Kayak fishing is one of my big hobbies. And there's something special about mountains for me. And I've asked our Energizer community a couple times, which one do you prefer, mountains or oceans? And usually it's split 50-50. A lot of people love mountains, a lot of people love beaches. Some people love both, and I love both. But if I had to pick, it would be the mountains. If I could have that mountain with a river or a lake, oh, it brings that sense of calm. But regardless of where it is, a beach, a mountain, there's a special connection you get when you are out in nature, that you just connect to God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it. You can find yourself and center yourself and also get that breath of fresh air, physically, but also I can't think of the right word now. Deeper
And
than
certainly
that, right?
emotionally, that's right.
Emotionally,
You're
exactly
you're
right.
so spot on, because I think we connect to all those things, and above all, then we connect to ourselves.
Right.
And that's what really drives. I mean, for me, so much of what came from when I thought about what principles and matter to me in my life, they were driven from being outdoors and understanding that, when you put our phone down for a second and you maybe step back a little bit and take a breath and actually enjoy the quiet and the silence and the beauty around us. That's certainly what I would say maybe 3 years ago, when what started this idea of, do I have an idea, a thesis, kind of something that I needed to share. That's really when it began, because at the onset, I guess, of COVID in March of 20, which is amazing to think almost 3 years ago now, it was the idea of getting outdoors that was my salvation.
Mm.
And by doing that, and especially where I am, where it was a little cooler, it was the emergence of spring, and yet this also very confusing time, to be outside almost gave me the calm to know that everything was going to be okay. We certainly don't need as much as we think sometimes.
Right. To be out there in nature, to connect, and in the midst of chaos, to have that serenity, that moment of peace. And I loved it. I think a lot of people flocked outside and did different things. I know in 2020, my wife and I had travel plans, and we're like, well, those got canceled. So what can we do? Well, we did a road trip, uh, you know, at, and it was in August of 2020, but to national parks. And so we tried being safe, and we stayed masked and separated from people, all those things. But we were able to go out and visit amazing parts of the country, parts I visited before, but first time for her to see. Oh my gosh, there's the Grand Tetons. Oh, there's Devil's Tower. Oh, there's Yellowstone. Oh, there's all these different things, the Badlands and all that. To take this road trip together and to create amazing memories, it's so impactful and amazing. And so let me ask you this question: as you go out in nature and you're connecting to yourself, what is one of the things you do to really come to that moment and connect? Because it's so busy, right? We have our phones, we're pulled in 1,000 directions, and you said it's nice to put it down, but how do you force yourself to put it down and come to that present moment?
It's such a good question, because I think that when we talk about this idea of meditation, which I'll kind of tie into my answer, I've always struggled with finding a meditation practice. And one of the things that, of many things that I admire of all the stuff that I follow that you do, between your challenges, your workshops, your yoga retreats, I think you instill so much of that that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. For me, it doesn't. And so what I find very meditative is when I'm outside, it's almost being cognizant and just mindful of something as simple as my breath, of something as just the quiet outside. You know, it's funny. I was thinking last night, I usually have the last walk of the dog about 10 o'clock at night, and it's my favorite part of my day. I find it so peaceful. I find it so relaxing. And all I do is I take him out, I watch him sniffing around. And it's usually quick. And sometimes I'll stay out there longer because I like looking up at the stars. I like taking a deep breath and in some small way, almost expressing my gratitude for another special day, a beautiful day, regardless of how it went. And I think that's kind of how I connect with being outdoors for someone who doesn't find a meditation practice that comes so easily.
Right. To find something that draws you in, like your breath. Like doing something simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to say these mantras. You don't have to do these poses. No. Just bring in something simple. And for me, the first thing I do is always my breath, because that just brings me out of the past, of thinking of the future, and come to that present moment to breathe. And then from there, I can go many different ways. And so when I go out hiking or walking, or even just taking my dogs out, right? Let them out in the backyard. I'll stand out there when it's nice out. I'm not brave enough to go out like when it's freezing below zero, but I'll go out there and I'll just enjoy the quiet, the silence,
Right.
or, oh, there's a car going. I'm just coming down to the present moment and embracing the joy. It sounds like you taking your dog out at night is me in the mornings when I'm able to. And I try to do this, especially on vacations. And I'll be perfectly honest, I need to work into my daily life, is that morning cup of coffee or tea where I'm just enjoying the sunrise. I just sit there for
Right.
5-10 minutes and enjoy the beautiful sunrise. Nothing else matters, just be in that moment. And
That's
it's so
such a great
amazing.
reminder. And I'm so thankful for you to say that because it's a reminder to me, you know, as I started this year, and like a lot of people, we begin our years, not so much necessarily with resolutions, but just sort of a new beginning. And I think that where I've struggled at times has been starting my day and just going rather
Mm,
than starting it at a place of peace and solitude, almost, you know, and I love sort of the phrasing using it, the sounds of silence.
mm,
There's
right.
nothing more peaceful than that. And I think that that's something I can always improve on, but I like to almost just take a moment to begin my day with I've been focusing on a word this year, and actually the first 9 or 10 days of the year so far, it's been pause. And I've been trying to find a way to pause before I begin my day, at the end of the day, but specifically also during the day. So I
Mhm.
could take moments so that I don't just take time for granted and it just runs away.
That's a beautiful intention to have, just to pause and savor those moments, not just at the bookends of the day, which are great. And a lot of people don't do that. Start there, but then throughout the day. One thing I love teaching and remind myself, which is why I teach it and more as a reminder, is to set our intentions for the day and for the week,
Yeah.
and whatever that is. It's to be calm, to be focused, to be happy, to be still, right? To be calm, to have that pause. And that's absolutely amazing.
I love
Um,
that idea, by the way, of being still, because that word, one of my favorite books, and actually was one of the impetus for when I, maybe 6 months before I had the idea to write this book, I met Ryan Holiday and he was speaking about his book, Stillness is the Key.
mm,
And there was so much about stoicism in there, but it really has to do with, like you're saying, this idea of stillness, which I think is so important. I would suggest, by the way, to anyone listening, recently read his latest release, Discipline is Destiny. And I think that's a very important book as well that anyone would enjoy. But I cut you off there. But when you said stillness, you spoke to my heart.
No, it's all good. This is a fun conversation. I love this, and I'll have to check out his new book as well. I love the stuff he's written so far and just what he's about. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And you mentioned your book, and so I have it out in front of me right now. So if you're watching this, you can see the cover of it, The Unicorn in You. If you're listening, sorry, you can't see it, but you can check it out. I mean, it's available pretty much everywhere, I would assume, right?
That's
Josh
right.
is
Yeah.
shaking his head. Yeah, it's good. You can find it anywhere. The Unicorn in You. So this book lays out 5 different qualities essentially that you could you could easily put into intentions for over 5 weeks if you wanted. I'll just run through them down quick, and I'd love for you to expand on how you came up with these, what they mean to you, and ways we could instill them in our lives if you'd like. And 5 are a lot, so we might pick 1 or 2, we'll see. But we have kindness, gratitude. Oh, I love gratitude. Integrity, humility, acceptance. That's a tough one at the end. I love it. So walk us through it. How did you narrow it down to 5? I mean, come on, there's so many things in our life that make us us, that let us shine our light. How'd you narrow it down to 5?
It's the type of thing where I went through so many qualities and characteristics and tried to understand foundationally, what am I looking to accomplish? And I started with this idea of peace and joy. And that allowed me to distill down the elements that I thought gave me peace and joy. So I broke down into the book kind of what drives each of these and why they would necessarily lead to that. So for example, kindness, I thought that had to do with compassion. And in the book, I outlined why I think kindness can give us ourselves peace and joy. In many ways, kindness can be very self-serving, but I think that there's so many elements in there that anyone would, very objectively agree that kindness can give you that sense in your own life. Gratitude, I thought, was this idea of awareness. Integrity, I thought, had to do with, sort of decency. And humility, I thought, had to do with perspective. And that's one that I'll probably focus on if I could. Acceptance, by the way, the last one, I thought is, like you said, that's a little bit a trickier one. And I think that has to do with flexibility, this idea that we can hold different views and feelings and emotions in our mind, and that having that flex or bend or stretch allows us to accept things in our life, whether we want them or not. But humility is something that I have found to really stand out for me in the course of these several months of speaking to so many people about this book. And here's why. I think what drives humility is the sense of cultivating awe in the world. It grounds us. It allows us to understand how significant and really insignificant we are in the world. And I think when we understand that, in many ways, it takes so much of the burden and weight of life off of our shoulders. And I believe that humility, I just recently pitched a TED Talk of humility being the new vulnerability. And we talk about vulnerability and how important that is. And I've always believed that its benefits are not for its own sake. That vulnerability allows us maybe to identify emotions, not just in ourselves, but in others. But I think humility could be something that going forward in the business world, in just kind of the global world, can really be one of the key characteristics that help us all find peace and joy.
Humility is a hard one for me. And I'll be honest, when I was reading that chapter, I was struggling. So here's a little history on me, and I think most of the Energizers have heard this before to some degree, but I struggled with my ego in the sense that I let it run the show. Like for 30 years, my ego was taking me on the journey and making the choices for me, or I allowed it to make the choices for me and all that. But for me, when I hear humility, and I see this in different people and friends, even as they're going on their journey and working through things, that, oh, humility means I'm saying I'm not worthy, I'm not good, that, oh, who am I? And I really struggled with that after, my ego is driving me and just bolstering, saying, I'm good, I got this, I'm fantastic. And well, how can I be humble? How can I have my humility say, oh, I'm not worthy, and my ego saying I was? But then after I came crashing down, right, the ego kicked out the pedestal from underneath me, I came crashing down, hit my rock bottom. And over these last number of years, I've been trying to rebuild that belief and confidence in myself. I've been humble. And I've been told I've been humble because, I'm really trying to not let that ego take over again and run wild, right? I'm not wanting it there at all. So, but what I realized is, okay, by doing that, I'm not allowing my true light to shine. I'm not shining as bright as I could, because it's not so much allowing my ego to go, but I'm holding myself back under the guise of being humble, or the humility of it all. And I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Like, how can I be humble, but yet stand up for myself when I need to?
That's such a great perspective, and I appreciate you sharing. And that's where I can learn so much as well, just by hearing different perspectives on what I wrote and what I felt. And I think you raised such a good point. And if I'm understanding correctly, this idea of, does humility necessarily have to mean the suppression of our ego and confidence and belief in ourselves? And are they mutually exclusive? Can they be? And one of the, kind of, I guess, words that I thought was interchangeable, but I really didn't think so with humility, was this idea of modesty. And I didn't know if the idea of, if we're immodest, does that mean that, we don't have to, be boastful? And I think that humility is something a little bit different. I'd be curious to dig into a little bit with you, though, about how the ego drove you, because that stuns me. You are, to me, so grounded, so kind-hearted, and certainly those two, I think, are very, very connected there. But to answer your question, where I think it doesn't have to lead necessarily to the suppression of our ego, I think humility maybe can be, for those of us that do struggle a little bit, is a recognition more than anything else. And maybe that recognition can just be that, listen, I still know that I'm special and I am good and that we're all very unique. But ultimately, I also know that we're tiny and we're ephemeral and we're small, and that this world and this universe is so much bigger than us. And maybe that's something that can give us a sense of peace and joy in a way that allows us to take some of the pressure off of us. To me, I always carried this burden for so long. And I think that I think in many ways, I was such a tough critic on myself. And that's a real sort of dichotomy with ego, right? I
Right.
mean, because we try to build ourselves up and give us the confidence. And I believe confidence is everything. And I think humility doesn't necessarily have to necessarily take away from that. But does that idea of a recognition maybe resonate a little bit with you?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. The recognition of our abilities, and as you mentioned, how big we are, but yet how small we are in the universe, and we could dig into that and have some fun in a little bit. But let me ask this one question first,
Yeah.
because I see energizers who feel so small compared to the world, right?
Right.
Not even afraid of letting their light shine there, but they're like, who am I to do this, to be here, and why should I do my own thing? Why should I pursue my wants and desires when I'm already doing this and this seems to be pleasing people, and what I think I should be doing, and but I'm being humble. I'm not sharing my gifts, or something along those lines. Like they're using it as an excuse to be small. How can
Yeah.
and that's what they believe, and that's hard. And so how can they break through that but still be humble?
You're speaking to the president of the People Pleaser Club right here.
I was a proud member for many years.
You were? You
Yes.
officially resigned?
Officially kicked it out. I'm doing my best to revoke the membership every time they offer.
Isn't it a hard thing? I
It
mean,
is.
and I imagine so many of the folks that listen to you that are attendees and participants in your programs, they struggle with what so many people do, is that what's rooted in us is a desire to please. And I guess that's driven in some ways by ego, but I think more so it's just an innate sense of, maybe it's a feeling of lacking. I think sometimes that I would maybe need that. I would need to please someone because I would need that approval. And I'm so glad you raised this with humility, because I think it's a fair point to say that, is there a distinction here? Do I have to compromise what I know that I'm capable of doing at the risk of being humble? And I don't think that we necessarily have to. For me, I think my struggles were really rooted so much in feeling the sense of angst and kind of stress and pressure that many of us feel. And I felt like this idea of humility released a lot of that. And in some ways gave me more confidence by allowing me to be humble. It sounds like a contradiction, but I think that may, to answer your question, having that humility may in fact release so much of that tension that exists with us, and allows us to then go ahead and have that confidence. And to be fair, I think that more than anything else, these 5 principles that I outlined, what I really wanted to do was prompt people to think about the principles that mattered in their lives. This idea of being a unicorn, really has to do in my idea of, being light and free and playful and joyful and all of these things. And how do we find the unicorn in ourselves? By finding the things that matter in our life that allows us to be rather than do. And I think it happens at a foundational level. What are the fundamentals? And so kindness, gratitude, integrity, humility, and acceptance. But I really want to prompt people to think about the things that matter in their life.
I think that's huge. Hey, Energizer. I want to cut in here really quick before you start this episode of the Jonesin For Show to let you know something really, really cool. And that is, we launched another podcast. That's right, we launched another podcast called, you ready? The Daily Energize. That's right, The Daily Energize is available on all streaming platforms, right? So however you like your podcast, go find us. What is the Daily Energize? It is your daily jolt of positivity, of energy, where I offer you tips, tricks, strategies, stories to help you crush your day. All the shows are roughly 5 to 10 minutes long, right? So on your commute to work or in your lunchtime, whenever you want, you could pop it in, listen to it, get a little jolt of energy so you can keep crushing your day. Again, it's called The Daily Energize, and I would love it, absolutely love it and appreciate it if you can subscribe. And heck, share it out with your friends. Give them a little jolt of energy. All right, on to today's episode. I think that's huge. And we all have our core values. Some of us know them, some of us don't. And there's kind of in a similar vein as that to a degree. But what are those central things that make you you? Now we could share them, right? Gratitude is definitely one of mine. Acceptance, being kind, right? Responding with love. Those are all things that I share with you and the unicorn in you specifically. But we all have those things that some of them are the same and some of them might be different. And that's
Right.
still beautiful because, well, we're all unicorns, right? Unicorns are special. They're amazing creatures, and we are amazing creatures. We are amazing beings who have this unique light and energy within us that we are blessed enough to share it out with the world if we so choose, or we can choose to just hide it and conform and not allow it to burst out and shine. But when we do, get ready, because it's energizing and fulfilling and truly amazing when that happens.
That's it. I love that you shared the idea of core values too. And by the way, I think it's so special and impactful that, your followers and those that know and love you, it's about energizing and what you do for them. You're energizing them, and they're in effect then your energizers. I love that. And I think that when you talk about core values, what are your energizers? Recognize in them as the core values. We talked about gratitude. And I think what's kind of neat about this exercise, it doesn't have to be just an exercise. You can dig into gratitude, right? And one of the things I write in my book is to say, I think that gratitude can be used or enhanced by understanding this idea of for me, not to me. Something happens as having benefit and value and utility to us, rather than we're being seen as a victim in there. And I think that when we dig into some of these values, like a gratitude, and we say, well, how do I develop more gratitude in my life? Well, maybe it's from using this understanding of, things happen to be for me, not to me. We find the silver lining, we find the positive in it. That, for me, gives me peace and joy because it lets go of any of thing where I thought, this is happening to me. I'm a victim in it. Why me? And I think that's one of the ways that, like you're talking about, core values can help anyone.
It's a mindset shift, right? Especially when you talk about gratitude, but looking at anything in life, and even taking your core values and allowing those to be a compass in your life, to allow you to say, oh, this aligns, this doesn't align, this is part of my core values, this isn't. That allows you to make more aligned decisions and allow you to follow what feels right to you and where you're meant to go, whether that's your, following your purpose, going after your vision, your goals, all of those things, and seeing, does my vision, does my goals, or do my goals align with it? And that's incredible. And the fact that we can all discover those qualities within us that matter to us. So let me ask you this question then. How can we discover those qualities in us? Is there like a list of, 100 different qualities we go through and we're like, yeah, like this one, this one, this one? Is it something we sit and contemplate as we're in the stillness outside when we let our dogs out? How do we discover these?
It's a great question. I think it's a combination of two of those things that you mentioned. It could be many others, but one other way could be through reflection of the moments in our life.
Mm.
Specifically, which ones had great resonance or memory. They could be painful ones, they could be ones that were our happiest. But I think in looking back in the course of our life, we will uncover and even reveal which qualities, which characteristics, which principles matter most to us, because we'll see what kind of drove our emotions during that time. Maybe something happened to you that gives you the warmest memory, and you could uncover then, you know what, it was kindness in that moment that someone showed me. And that really made me feel peaceful and joyful. And by the way, at the top should be whatever matters to someone. Maybe someone's looking for confidence and not peace and joy. And what are the, principles that help sort of drive that? And I think you are so spot on when you talk about the alignment of these principles with decisions, because that's really what's, I think, at the heart of what I try to impart in the book. It's this idea of, what can we do that acts as a default? And I think you use that word too, that we don't have to really necessarily think through things. In many ways, we have a clear mind, we have a clear head, and we're able to just sort of be, because we know who we are inside. We have a foundation for being. And that alignment, I think, really drives so much of our decision making without really thinking.
Well, right. Once it becomes part of our programming, we don't have to overly think about it. At first, yes, you got to think about it and compare and do that. But as soon as it starts to become automatic and part of us, it becomes second nature. And then
That's right.
for me, then everything starts to get to be fun and even more enjoyable. I mean, there's still hard times, right? Of course, but a lot of those things start to be more enjoyable because it's in alignment, because we know, oh, this brings me joy, this is fitting, or this is where I'm going. Oh, this is a hardship. Oh, I'm facing this obstacle, this difficult moment, but I know I can overcome it. That gets me closer to living my purpose. Or I'm struggling here so I can help others. I mean, that's part of your purpose, right?
That's
so
such a beautiful thought, because this idea then of awareness,
yeah.
and how we become more aware of how we've grown, what's driving us, maybe what's upsetting us, or just how principles then help inform some of our decisions. And I wonder, because you referenced, through your energizers and what they are seeking and how they're trying to find their own path, what do you think is the one or two kind of key issues or challenges that they face relative? I know confidence is one, or kind of just, but is it one kind of unifying thread that you found over the years of all your work that is kind of undefeated through this whole, journey of life?
I would say confidence in the terms of self-belief being one of the
Mm,
main threads, right? That they believe in themselves. And the other one is to love themselves. If I'm going to be
mm,
perfectly honest, which kind of goes in with the confidence to a degree, but to love themselves unconditionally, to stop beating themselves up, because I know I struggle with that, and I know almost all of the other energizers we have in our community have dealt with that. I honestly I can't even think of one, so we'll say 99% just to be on the
yeah,
safe side, right? Struggle with loving themselves because they're beating themselves up over choices they made, mistakes that happened, or
right.
who knows what. So coming to acceptance of saying, hey, yeah, I messed up. These were the things I did, but let me learn and grow from that, and let me let it go so I could be at my best. I would say that's one of the most common threads along everyone.
I'll share with you a quick story if I could, because I referenced this event that I went to where I heard Ryan Holiday speak about stillness is the key. Now, as a PS to that story, I happened to be at his table. It was a small table. And I talk about this in the book, this idea that he asked kind of a small group of us, hey, what's your North Star? What do you know to be true? What's certain in your life? And I had an immediate thought, but true to my nature, I didn't want to say anything. And finally, at the end, I said to him, I think for me, kindness is everything. And that became the principle that I really started my book with. And I talked about what's the idea that drives kindness. And I think it's compassion. But as a subheader to that, in my book, I talked about self-compassion. And that oftentimes, and I think for so long, what I struggled with was being kind to myself and having that self-compassion. So in many ways, I'm not surprised to hear that that has become something, just no matter what over the years, no matter who you are, that's something that we all have sometimes some struggles being kind enough to ourselves.
It's is an ongoing journey for many of us, and even for me, right? I struggled with it for years, worked to overcome it, learned to love myself, where I can look myself in the mirror and tell myself I love me and truly mean it.
Right.
Whew, it was a journey, and even still, there's days, there's times when that's still a struggle, and knowing that it's a journey, that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're learning to improve that number one relationship, that relationship with us, and really make that a whole and fulfilled is incredible.
Do you get your joy or one of your joys from seeing someone that you work with, seeing an energizer come to a place where they feel maybe more complete or whole, or have then finally come to terms with how special and unique and lovable they are?
That energizes me beyond belief to see them feel that energy within themselves and go, oh my gosh, I am this, or, I have this energy. I have these amazing qualities. I am whole. I am enough. I am worthy. Whew, that empowers me like nothing else.
And you almost, and it's funny thing because certainly it's life is a journey and we go through ups and downs, but in some ways that's like a light that goes on and a switch is finally turned where it's, I know there are going to be times where I may be a little down on myself, but at least I now am able to know that I am worthy, that I can love myself. And I, I bet that's very fulfilling for you in so many ways. And to see folks, I think, come to that finally, it almost lifts the curtain and that darkness
Mhm.
in their life and allows them to then kind of look forward and shed that sense of doubt and not feeling that they're worthy.
It's hard on that journey. You feel isolated, you feel alone, and
Right.
what I love is that we accept everyone. Like we're if you want to be here, you're part of our family, right? And you're gonna have love, you're gonna have support on that journey through the highs and lows. And one of the things I loved when I was teaching, one of my driving forces for that was the aha moment of students when they were struggling with the music and not getting it or not seeing how it related. Then boom, it clicks, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" Right? And so now that I'm not teaching and doing what I'm doing, well, now it's energizers doing exactly what you said, having that aha moment of, oh my gosh, this is this light. And there's a lot of smaller aha moments, and then there's that big one where it all clicks, and they're like,
Right.
holy crap, this is amazing. And they get energized, and them being energizes everybody else around them who are going to see it participate, whether it's at one of our events or whether it happens virtually and they share it or whatever. But that energizes all of us, and it's my
That's
mission
right.
to spread that energy, those aha moments, that positive abundant mindset all around the world, and we're doing that, which is amazing, and you're part of it now, so I'm so grateful to have you here being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I love everything you said there. And I think that it's so inspiring, especially, to hear that personal experience behind it. You mentioned positive and, I've been looking, I think you have a positivity challenge that I think, those are the types of things, when I think about, I mentioned, New Year's and people talk about, resolutions, and oftentimes they happen to be maybe with habits or they could be with our physical and weight, I'm sure, is probably the number one resolution. But have you found that there are folks that, I looked at less resolution as more into intentions for this year, and I tried to really distill it down. Have you found in your work that there are those looking to make those type of bigger, more impactful changes now that there's so much around us about personal growth and development, and that, we can try to find our way a little bit more, maybe become more whole? Have you find that a lot of folks that you're working with are focused more on those kind of bigger, ambitious changes in our lives?
That's a good question. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm going to say no to that one.
Likewise.
I would love to see more people go after those bigger, not even hairy, audacious goals, but the
Right.
bigger picture of themselves. But I'm also happy with where they're at, in the sense of the people who, okay, you get New Year's resolutions or goals. Yes, a lot of it's, I think the number one is weight loss, which is great. All right, you want to be healthy physically, and that affects you mentally and all that. But they're working on different parts of themselves. No, what I
Hmm.
love is that our accountability groups and things that we work through, and the energizers we hear. Yes, some weight loss, but a lot of it's, I want to believe in myself. I want to grow this confidence. I want to to love me for me. I want to learn how to set up boundaries and do that. So it's all part of that bigger picture, but just the smaller parts of it, because it's hard to go after a big picture, right? It's hard to go after those big things because that's overwhelming and there's so much to do. So what do? Well, you take it one step at a time. So you take, okay, let's work on boundaries. Let's do that. Okay, now let's build our confidence and do that. And then we start stacking that and building it. So you get those smaller aha moments, which then lead to those bigger ones until you're at the point where you're like, I feel really good. Now what's next? So like for me, this year, I want to step into being me fully without, have the humility, have that there, but also be confident, not egotistical, not an ego man, but to be confident in who I am in my life, that I can go out there and step into a room, shoulders back, head up high, and be like, yeah, I'm the Prince of Positivity. This is what I do. And I know I'm good at it without it being sounding cocky or rude. It's just the truth that's there. And it's been many years of me being afraid to say that wholeheartedly and stepping into it. And that's my goal for this year. And that's it seems like a big thing to do, but there's a lot of small steps that built up to it. And who knows, maybe that is just a small step in something bigger. And that's a beautiful part of this journey. We'll discover as we go along.
Well, number one, I wouldn't bet against you for achieving that goal. And number two, I asked that question because folks that I, work with and talk to as well, I didn't find that they were focused on those big goals as well. And I understand why, for sure. It can be very daunting and intimidating, but I think you pegged it. It's this idea is that we work on maybe elements of it. And so much of maybe, our goals underneath it are rooted in many of the things that we want to do that maybe we can't identify it, or it's just too overwhelming to say, let me attack this of finding self-love. Maybe it starts with some confidence here or there, or maybe it happens to do with gratitude and all these pieces. We know that this is it's a puzzle and nothing fits perfectly, but we can never stop trying and never stop growing and learning and trying to improve ourselves and trying to understand others better. And I think that everyone's journey, obviously, it's a winding road, but that's okay. And that's life. And I think gratitude, and you pointed out before, I think it can really kind of underpin so much of what we do in our lives when it comes to just appreciating the little things in life. And I think that has become so important to us as life gets complicated and busy and stressful, of just kind of distilling it down to its simplest element. And that is just being thankful and grateful for another day.
I love it and 100% agree. And I think that's a nice little bow to end the episode on, is to be thankful and grateful for every day that we have, to take those moments of stillness and to embrace yourself in nature with yourself, connect with you, learn to love yourself, be humble, have that humility, and just be you. I love it. And this has been so amazing. I am just tickled pink. It's saying I haven't said in years, but I am just so incredibly happy to have you joining all of us today, Josh, and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. And I have to tell you, I am energized, which I think by extension makes me now an honorary Energizer.
Your family, brother. You are here to stay.
I love it. And this is going to be the first conversation of many. So I am thrilled to finally connect with you. I'm grateful for you for having me and your generosity. And as you were kind enough to mention the Unicorn in You, I would love to share it with anyone. It's available on Amazon or the unicorninyou.com. And if anyone is unable to get it, I'm happy to send a copy as well. I'd be happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the offer. I was just about to ask you where they could pick it up. So now you know, definitely get it. Take him up on that offer. Get yourself a copy one way or another, because this book is amazing. It's going to open your eyes to not only those 5 areas, but have you start contemplating the other areas in your life that resonate with you, so that you can let your unicorn shine in all of its fun colors, all of its brightness, so that you can be you and let your full true light shine. It's going to be so amazing. So Josh, outside the book, is there any way people can reach out to you and connect with you at all?
Sure. I'm at joshkramer.com. I work with folks on finding their inner unicorn, finding peace and joy, and they can connect with me there. And I just love having more conversations like this. So look forward to following you and seeing what 2023 has in store. I already know big things. And again, thank you so much, my friend, for having me. Very kind of you.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And I can't wait to have more conversations like this with you. And so Energizers, go check them out. You can, if you didn't write down the website or get it down, don't worry. You can go to our show notes. It's spencermjones.com/Jonesin For Show. You'll see, just click on this link for this episode and you'll get all the show notes, all the links, all that good stuff. So you can get your copy of The Unicorn in You and connect with Josh. So again, Energizers, thank you for being you, for shining your light. Remember that you are amazing, worthy, and enough just the way you are. So keep on shining. And until next time, I'll catch you later. All right. Bye.